source of all light, by your word you give light to the soul. Pour out on us the spirit of wisdom and understanding, that our hearts and minds may be opened. Amen. Our first reading today comes from Isaiah chapter 58, verses 1 through 12, found on page 688 of your pew Bibles. Shout out, do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. Announce to my people their rebellion, to the house of Jacob their sins. Yet day after day they seek me and delight to know my ways, as if they were a nation that practiced righteousness and did not forsake the ordinance of their God. They ask of me righteous judgments. They delight to draw near to God. Why do we fast, but do you not see? Why humble ourselves, but you do not notice? Look, you serve your own interest on your fast day and oppress all your workers. Look, you fast only to quarrel and to fight and to strike with a wicked fist. Such fasting as you do today will not make your voice heard on high. Is such the fast that I chose, a day to humble oneself? Is it to bow down the head like a bulrush? Excuse me. And to lie in a sackcloth and ashes? Will you call this a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is it not the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and to not hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call the Lord, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, Here I am. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places, and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. Thanks be to God.
Our second scripture reading this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 13 through 20. You can find it on page 4 of your New Testaments. This is following the last week's Sermon on the Mount. This is still that Jesus is still speaking to the disciples and the crowd. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hid. But no one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, that it gives light to the whole house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For I truly tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of the letter will pass from the law, until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called last in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the word of our Lord.
Thank you, God.
Would you pray with me? God, thank you for the opportunity to be gathered in this warm and safe and brave place. We ask that this morning you would be with the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts, that they may be pleasing and acceptable in your sight. I pray that anything that is not from you would be quickly forgotten, but the words that are from you would take root in our hearts and in our lives and encourage us along the way. We pray all this in your holy name. Amen. You've heard this passage before? Yes. The salt and the light passage? That's why I shared it with you. Salty and lit. I want one of those t-shirts. But I've been thinking, obviously, a lot about this passage this week, and I think one of the things that I don't know that I had noticed before, I've always understood that Christ is calling us to be salt, and I distinctly remember almost a year ago when I preached on this, Kelly was in Fellowship Hall and said something sassy, and she said to her mom, well, we're supposed to be salty. Indeed, my friend, I remember these things. But I think I always looked at this passage as a call to my personal behavior, but I don't think I looked at it in regards to anyone else. And the more I've read and thought about this week, salt doesn't do salt any good if it's alone. Right? Salt's purpose is to enhance the thing that it's put on. Or with. You see that?
Sure.
Similarly, light is just light unless it's shining on the things around it. It doesn't do us, light is just light. Now, we take light for granted. Do you understand that? Especially in regard to this particular scripture. If you try, I read this book, Learning to Walk in the Dark. It's written by Barbara Brown Taylor. And at one point, she tries to go out and be within the darkness. She goes out to a cabin out in the back part of her woods. And still, there's these little beams of light staring at her from an alarm clock or from whatever, right? We're surrounded with light in our culture. It's very hard to get into true darkness where we live and how we live. But even in a dark, dark, dark room, the little bit of light coming from your alarm clock still illuminates quite a bit. You see that? So even if you feel like maybe your light isn't that bright, I'd like to suggest to you that you can still illuminate and make an effect on the world around you. Okay? So, what does it mean for us that we are to be salt and light and affect those around us? You guys are awfully quiet today. It creeps me out. What does that mean? This is to you. What does it mean to you to be a salt and light, to affect the ones around you?
Be positive.
Be positive.
Bring good
Bring good to other people. Smile. Set an example. Smile.
Preserve.
Love.
Preserve.
Preserve. Welcoming. These are all things you can do. This was a very simple list. The list given to you in Isaiah, by the way, a little bit challenger of a list, would you say? Bringing the homeless into your home, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, fighting for righteousness. That is a full list that you were given in Isaiah of ways in which to let God's light shine through you. That whole discussion in Isaiah is about, I don't want the fasts and the offerings the way you've been offering them. Did you catch that? There's another, I'm trying to remember where it is, where it's like your offerings stink, is the way it's said in Scripture. Because it's not goodness that you're offering. You're just offering up burnt animals. You're not offering up goodness. And similarly, that's what's happening in the Isaiah passage. Forget about the offerings. Forget about the fast. Forget about that. If you're trying to fulfill that part and you've missed the whole, there are people that are hungry bit, you've missed the point. And I think that similarly, that is exactly what Jesus is saying in a very much more simplified manner at the end of the Sermon on the Mount here. That if you can be, the church, if you can do the things to enhance the world around you, then you are being the salt of the earth, the light, the city on a hill. Instead of, hide it under a bushel. I've been humming that to myself all week. I don't know, does anybody else do that when they read this passage? But what can you do? And I want you to think about that honestly. If we just change what our insides look like and it has no effect on the world around us, what is the point? What is the point? To feel better about yourself? Because we're not in this for our own gain. I think I've been saved. I don't know about you guys. Okay? I think that work is done. So I'm not worried about what's going to happen in my life or what's going to happen to me. But I can make a difference for those around me. I can do good things. I can enhance the people and the lives that I touch. And so it's my hope and my prayer that as you go this week, I want you to think about it in an honest way. What is it? How can I be salty this week? Or lit in a safe way. That's very loaded for me. Last week sharing about my alcoholism, that's very loaded. But how can you do that? What does it mean in just one person you encounter this week? Can you make a difference? And I think those things you listed, a smile, love, kindness, warmth. It's cold outside, so, a jacket. Food to the hungry. These are things you can do this week. Whether or not you feel like your light is big enough. you can, because God's light is within you, make a difference today and the rest of the day. Amen?
Amen.